to present my study, the professional, personal, and emotional well-being of Filipino female seafarers on board ocean-going vessels. And this is under the direction of my advisor, the very supportive Dr. Ana May Silencio. Ma'am, thank you for being here. So seafaring. Seafaring is a profession that is really understood and often misinterpreted to be a life of comfort and lots of travel. So I still remember. So this seafaring is indeed and has always been a challenging job. And for the longest time, seafaring is one of the traditionally male-dominated occupation. So however, on the other hand, with the strategies launched by the International Maritime Organization, they launched strategies for the integration and participation of women in the maritime industry. So currently, the number or the population of female mariners or women mariners are increasing. So we have statistics for the overall population of female seafarers. So there's an estimate 1 to 2% of the world's 1.25 million seafarers. This is way back 1992, an IMO study, and which was the basis of 2003 study also by Belcher et al. And based on the 2000 study of the IMO, there are 225 women seafarers out of 230,000 Filipino seafarers. Yes, madami po. That is registered from 1983 to 1990. So the current statistics, based on the International Transport Workers Federation, so the workforce ng women seafarers is estimated 2%. This is for the world's maritime workforce. Ibig pong sabihin, buong mundo na. So let's get particular with the Filipinos female seafarers. So these are the current numbers. So according to statistics, our source, the POEA Data Bank and Network Division. So by the year 2006, the number of Filipino women seafarers deployed had risen to 6,436. Out of the total sea-based deployment, that is around 274,497. So and then yung numbers nila, they continue to increase, and swell. So at the end of the year 2010, you can see that the women deployed are account for 9,002. So dun tayo sa medyo mas latest. So currently, by the year 2016, we have a number of 15,080 women seafarers deployed. These are Filipino female seafarers. So whereas the record shows we have 1.45% of these 15,080, they are female officers. Then 6.17% female ratings. And whereas accounts for the female seafarers on passenger ships, so ito yung pinakamalaki talaga is the 92.38%. And with the increasing numbers and access of women seafarers in the maritime world, we also have to pay attention to their well-being. This is of very important matters. So we have here 3 aspects of the well-being that have tackled in this study. So we have the professional, personal, and emotional well-being. And driven towards the well-being of the seafarers is the International Labor Organization, the Maritime Labor Convention, or the MLC 2006. So on the context of this 4th pillar of the maritime law, or the International Maritime Law, they have addressed some special conditions and provisions specifically for the women seafarers. But still, over the years, there are issues reported with regards to gender-related challenges for our female seafarers. So firstly, When a seafarer or a woman seafarer go on board, the first problem is to prove themselves professionally. No, kaya ba yan? Kaya ba talaga? So, on a study made by Titada in 2010, stated that female seafarers' difficulty in finding own identity to become accepted in professional capacity. So, a female seafarer must be physically and technically competent so that she can win the respect of his or of her male colleagues. Another study made by Kitada by the year 2013, it was entitled The Code of Behavior at Sea, Women Seafarers Shipboard Identity Management. So on this study, it reveals that the culture of seafaring reflects the masculine norms and values which could affect the personal well-being of the women seafarers. And the biggest challenge that seafarers will face is the emotional well-being. There's a study made by Lepowski in 2014. It stated that seafarers are very vulnerable to emotional health issues. So that includes anxiety disorders, stress, depressions, maybe because due to the medyo malayo sa pamilya, long voyages, ang daming trabaho, laging puyat. So those are among many reasons that can really make it a lot harder for the seafarers. And these three aspects of well-being, the professional, personal, and emotional, are interrelated and connected to each other. So parang kapag ikaw ba heartbroken, nakakakain ka ba ng maayos? Parang hindi, no? So pag meron kang issue on board when it comes to emotional health, parang hirap magtrabaho. So you have to be your best at work every day. And you will also have to pay attention to your whole self. No? You have your own identity pa rin. So indeed, each of these aspects of well-being has an impact to each other. So for this study, this study assesses the condition of the well-being of Filipino female seafarers on board ocean-going vessels. So this is particular on vessels trading international or on foreign trade. Okay, so those are the statement of the problems that sought to answers by this study. Okay, so the results. Let I go to the result. So the results. First, we obtained the demographic profile of the Filipino female seafarers, our participants. So the majority here, the age 18 to 25 years old. And no respondents came from the age bracket of less than 18 years old, 36 to 45 years old, and more than 45 years old. So bakit kaya? So this is in compliance, of course, with the minimum age requirements. So we have the International Labour Organization, the Maritime Labour Convention 2006. You can find in Title 1, Regulation 1.1, Standard A1.1, the minimum age requirements. No? So on paragraph 1, it's stated there that no employment on board the ship under the age of 16 is prohibited. No? Bawal yung mga bata na, bawal yung mga under age of 16. Pero may mga mukhang bata, pwede pa yun. Ganun lang. And then, on paragraph 2 further, it states that night work under the age of 18 is prohibited. So, if you are on a manning agency, so are you going to take chance na employ ng age 17 and 18, though merong mga restrictions? So, baka yung iba because of some sponsorship or cadetship program. But for this study, no respondents are under 18 years old. And moreover, this also supports the study by Christina in 2012, wherein it states that in the Philippines, major manning agency refused to accept application from any women of 35 years old and above. Pero pag sa men, the age limit was set at 50. So their own procedures for the manning agency. Yeah. So for the civil status, the majority of our respondents were single. I don't think if you are married and you have your own family, you are the mother, and are you still going to go on board? And the majority of years of sea service experience, 3 to 5 years. The duration of contract is 7 to 9 months. That's the normal with the manning agencies. And for the position on board, we have a greater number of Filipino female ratings than the female officers. So I suggest for the female ratings to please continue until you get your license. Sayang naman po. So for the professional well-being, the overall assessment here is very positive. So okay naman po tayo when it comes to the professional well-being. So personal well-being, we have some issues found in the results of the study. Okay. And to the sanitary bins that they can dispose these items. I don't think you have stocks of sanitary items in your banded store on board, so that if I am there on board, I can buy it. Wala naman po, no, hindi mo tayo nag-inventory doon or nag-stock sa banded store ng sanitary items. And next, sharing health problems. So particular po tayo when it comes to when a female seafarers having a menstrual period. No, syempre minsan affected din talaga yung personal well-being ng female seafarers. Medyo mahirap din pong kumilos pag sobrang laki po ng mga PPE. And lastly, for the personal well-being is the changing room. So we have changing rooms on board the vessel. But yung changing room doon is not separated for men and women. No, so most likely, female seafarers doon na lang sila magpapalit from clean clothes to working clothes doon sa mga kabina nila. Doon na lang po. Akit ka na lang kung ang kabina mo nandun pa sa fourth deck, so akit ka na lang, galing ka doon sa engine room. So ganun po, medyo time consuming din. And for the emotional well-being, though we have all the positive overall assessment for the well-being, they have stated some issues lang po with regards to that study. So first and foremost, with regards to the emotional well-being, so the study showed that some of the female seafarers are still being exposed to sexual harassment or bullying. So this comes in various forms. Marami naman pong klase yan. And they do not have access to emotional counseling. So they have here the significant relationship. So based on the evidences of the hypothesis testing, so we have come up that this demographic profile of the female seafarers respondents are significantly related to the aspects of their professional, personal, and emotional well-being. And for the recommendations, based on the findings and conclusions drawn from this study, so these are the recommendations. For the shipbrowing companies, this study recommends for the enhancement of the non-discriminatory policy. So please make sure, please have some policies that women seafarers cannot feel na hindi issue yung gender namin to continue or to pursue po yung mga seafaring career. Sometimes that's an issue. And facilities and amenities that can cater female seafarers. So they also, or the manning agencies should also consider yung quality ng manpower that the female seafarers can give. Kasi right now, I think there are shortage of Filipino officers. So somehow, female seafarers, pwedeng punan yung shortage na yun. And the company complaint procedures. All companies, I'm sure they have the company complaint procedures because we have the onboard complaint procedure as per the ILO MLC. So for the company complaint procedures, to ensure the protection and identity of the female seafarers. Sometimes when it comes to complaints and concerns, the question is the confidentiality. Kaya they refuse to share kung ano man yung napapagdaanan nila on board. And the PPE or the personal protective equipment and work clothes being issued. So, if possible to take into consideration the women's physique, yung hindi po masyadong malaki, na binibigay for the seafarers so that female seafarers can have the utmost safety for all operations on board the vessel. Okay. And for the seafaring industry, we have an enhancement of policies regarding the access of sanitary items on board. Actually, we have already policies with regards to sanitary facilities, and it was stated in the ILO MLC 2006, Title 3, Regulation 3.1, Standard A3.1, Accommodation and Facilities, Paragraph 11, wherein it's discussed the requirements for sanitary facilities. Yung mga sanitary facilities being discussed po, these are the toilets, the wash bins, but not exactly the sanitary items needed po, especially for the conditions of the female seafarers. And changing room. So, meron naman din po sa ating ILO MLC for the changing room. It can be found on ILO MLC 2006, Title 3, Regulation 3.1, Guideline B3.1.9, Other Facilities. When it comes to changing room, ang diniscuss po dito is a separate facilities to change clothes for engine personnel department. But how about if there's an engine female officers or female rating, so still there are no separate facilities given for provided for the men and the women seafarers on board. And lastly, is to boost the Wellness at Sea program. So meron po tayo yan, Wellness at Sea. Madami po. Maraming ports na pag nandun ka, akyat sila sa barko mo and then they will discuss regarding the wellness po. So this is to improve the seafarers' well-being then. So to add, it is nice to know yung theme po nung this year's IMO, the Day of the Seafarer, is Seafarers' Well-being. So if nagamit nyo to nung last June 25 and nung Maritime 1, is hashtag support seafarers well-being. Yun po. So that is for the advocacy for higher standards of welfare and providing a positive contribution for the well-being of our seafarers. So that's all for my presentation and thank you.